Well, good morning. Glad you guys are here as we are continuing our series on triggered things that set us off, things that maybe is our reaction to some negative things that may be happening in our life. Let me ask you this morning. How many 80s babies, 90s kids do I have in the house? Anybody? Any? Okay. A few of you had a few in the 9:30. All right, the rest of y'all can just take a time out for a second. All right, you remember back in the day, like everything we grew up with was extreme. Everything was extreme, right? And it didn't have an E in the beginning, just had a big X in the beginning. Extreme. Everything was extreme, right? Your drinks had to be extreme. All of the TV shows had to be extreme. Everything that you consumed was supposed to be extreme, right? I remember growing up as a kid. In church, like there was like the extreme Bible, right? And literally it was just the Bible, and it had a guy skateboarding on the front of it, right? Or, we just stamped things as extreme and put like somebody skateboarding or rollerblading or rock climbing or some surfing, I don't know. Everything was extreme. Y'all remember the notebooks? I was thinking last week, do y'all remember the notebooks back in the day that had the crazy drawings of like, it would be like an eagle holding a baseball, or it'd be like a bear chewing on a football or something like that. Everything was extreme. Everything was in your face, right? And I remember thinking like, that stuff is so cool, but a lot of us are extreme in our thinking. This is where we all find ourselves. Did any of you ever find yourself like going to the extreme in your head in situations? Like you think sometimes maybe worst case scenario about things ever? You guys sometimes think like the sky is falling, right? And you just come up with things. Okay, so last week, I just got off a boat from a cruise on Friday, right? Had a great time. My wife and some friends, we were able to go, and it was a great time. But I found myself doing this on a cruise ship as I'm having the time of my life. I find myself already thinking in extremes. One of my things I enjoy to do is I just like standing on the side of the boat and looking out in the ocean because it's beautiful, it's vast, and you just get this picture of like how big God is and just how you're just a drop in the water. Like it's really, really cool, right? But then I have extreme thoughts, right? And I sit there and I think to myself, man, if this boat sinks, and I'm like, it's over for me, right? And like it's the middle of the night, you're out looking at the water, and I'm thinking, what would happen if I jumped off this ship right now? Like just weird thoughts, you know what I mean? So every night we had dinner, and it was really cool because a lot of times if you get like the window seat, you can look out and see at the ocean, the sun setting. And I remember a couple years ago we were on one, and like literally the sun setting and dolphins are prancing out on the water it was like the most magical scene in the world, right? Well, this year we were on the upper level, and we didn't get that view because that's where all the lifeboats are parked if they need them, right? So you couldn't see out into the ocean. But so what does my messed up head do? As we're sitting there eating, I'm like looking at the thing. I'm like, okay, it says it holds 150 people. Could you imagine having to get off of the ship and sit in that thing with 100? I'm thinking the most messed up things, the worst case scenarios, right? So here I am on a ship. We're going to paradise. We're going to these awesome places. We're eating amazing food. And all I can think about is worst case scenarios and things, right? It's just an unnatural way of thinking. It's a messed up way of thinking. Many of us go to the extreme. Many of us get so worked up that we find ourselves in a constant state of panic. And we're worked up with whatever thing may come our way because we think that that is just the worst, right? We think that what we're going through is just the worst thing that could ever happen. And we get worked up and we overreact in such a way that we're not actually finding any type of peace in our life. I find myself doing this often. And I think that's exactly what's happening in this story that we're continuing. We're talking over the next couple weeks of this story of this guy called Naaman in the book of 2 Kings. It's in the Old Testament. And so Trent was talking about the beginning of the story last week. What we find happening is, so the king was this king of Aram. He has this commander of his army, Naaman, and he is good at what he does. I mean, he is really, really good. But he finds this problem. He has leprosy. He gets diagnosed with leprosy. Now, leprosy came in many different forms. Basically, he might have had leprosy, he might not have, we don't know, because anything where there was any kind of real big skin issue, they just labeled as leprosy because they weren't really sure what it was, and they were kind of worst case scenario. Like, you get like bad acne, leprosy, you know what I mean? Because it's like, we ain't messing with this. We don't want this to be a part of our life. It's kind of like today. If you heard the word leprosy back then, today it's like when you hear the word cancer, like it just causes this like, oh no. Like, I don't care what type of cancer anyone has dealt with. When you've dealt with that, it's scary. It's awful, right? And so that's the same thing. If you were diagnosed with leprosy, it's like, man, pack your bags, man. This is going to be rough for you, right? So he's got that, and he's trying to get through it, and they're trying to figure out what to do. So what ends up happening is they want him to survive. They want him to make it. The king would love for that to happen. Well, the servant of Naaman's family, this little girl, she was a part of Israel. She says, listen, there is a prophet in Israel. There's a prophet in Israel that could heal this dude. It could happen. So the king's like, that would be great. I want him to be healed. I don't want him to have leprosy. So he decides that he's going to send Naaman off with a letter to the king of Israel, to the king of God's people at this time. And he wants him to have Naaman be healed by the prophet. So that's where we pick up in this story. And I want you to see what ends up happening. All right, this is in 2 Kings chapter 5. This starts in verse 5. It says, go and visit the prophet, the king of Aram told him. I will send a letter of introduction for you to take to the king of Israel. So Naaman started out carrying as gifts 750 pounds of silver, 150 pounds of gold, and 10 sets of clothing. The letter to the king of Israel said, with this letter I present my servant Naaman. I want you to heal him of his leprosy. So the king sends off Naaman. Not only just Naaman, doesn't send him empty-handed, right? 750 pounds of silver, 150 pounds of gold, and 10 sets of clothing. Nice clothes, right? So here is the king of Israel. He's met by Naaman. He's met with gifts, gold, silver, fine clothing, all these things. And then there's a letter attached to all of it and says, I want you to heal him. So if you have been delivered by this guy and you get all these nice things and you get all these wonderful things as a token of saying, listen, I want you to do something about my servant, but I've heard that you had a prophet, but you know what? I'm not just going to say for free, here's all these things you can have, right? So the letter is then given to the king. Watch how the king reacts to all these things. It says, when the king of Israel read the letter, he tore his clothes in dismay and said, am I God that I can give life and take it away? Why is this man asking me to heal someone with leprosy? I can see that he's just trying to pick a fight with me. So the king of Israel, the king of God's chosen people, in this moment as he receives this letter, it says that he literally tears his clothes, which is the form of like just absolute insanity, absolute rage that he's filled with in this moment. And he tears his clothes and he says, who does he think, what is he talking about? Does he think I'm God? He thinks that I can heal people? You know what it is? That guy just wants to start something. That's what it is. He's trying to conjure something up. He's trying to make this a bigger deal than it actually is. And so he decides that he's going to start freaking out. He's going to start panicking. He's going to start losing his mind because of a letter that came with silver, gold, and fine clothing. This was his reaction. A little bit of an overreaction in my opinion, but I don't know. But this is how he reacts to the fact that now he thinks that somehow this is on him. What ends up happening is the way that he reads into this letter is that this king wanted him to heal Naaman. And he's like, I can't do it. I absolutely do not have the power to make this happen. I cannot control the outcome of what will happen to Naaman. You've given me all these things, and I can't control what's going to happen to this guy. So he decides that he's going to go completely different. You know what? He's trying to start something. That's what it is. He's not truly wanting him healed. He's not truly wanting me to do something. He wants to fight me. That's what it is. And it starts this amazing conflict, right? That's what he thinks is going to happen. The fact of the matter is that many times when we are met with situations in our life and we are met with problems and issues that we think need resolved, what do? We want to be the ones that solve them. We want to be the ones that fix them. And in the moment when we realize that we can't, we freak out. In the moment where we realize that we are powerless, that is when we hit the panic button. And we start to lose it. And what ends up happening is we find ourselves truly powerless and we're scared of what the future may hold because we do not control it. What ends up happening is we start to have different reactions. But what I see from our fear is that fear of being powerless, it actually leads to an overreaction. It leads to a fleshly reaction, as I like to call it. Because in this world, those who claim Christ, every single day, you're in a constant struggle. Two things, every single day. It's going to be live life by the flesh or live life by the Spirit. This is the constant struggle that you and I will fight with constantly in our lives as we are trying to figure out what it means to live this life as a Christian, as a Christ follower. These are the issues. The Apostle Paul talked about this a long, long time ago. He was writing a letter to the church in Galatia. And as he was writing this whole book that he's writing, this whole letter that he wrote to this church was for them to understand what it meant to be free in Jesus, what it meant to live a life of freedom. That's what he wanted them to understand, that this life in Christ is actually truly freedom found for every single one of us. And he wanted them to understand that here's where the rubber meets the road. Here's where the issue lies. He talks about this exact same thing in Galatians chapter 5. Look at what he says. He says, "So I say, walk by the Spirit, and you will not gratify the desires of the flesh. For the flesh desires what is contrary to the Spirit, and the Spirit what is contrary to the flesh. They are in conflict with each other, so that you are not to do whatever you want. But if you are led by the Spirit, you are not under the law." So, from that point on, Paul wanted them to understand, and he wants us to understand today, that if we are in Christ, we are not under the law, we are not under a set of rules, we are literally free. And it's a beautiful place to live. But unfortunately, what we do, instead of living in our freedom, we decide that we are going to live in fear of being powerless and not having control over every situation in our life. So we decide that we are going to react in our flesh. We are not going to react Spirit-led. So what are some of the ways when we have situations that come into our lives, when we have issues, when we have challenges, when we have those fears that come into our life, what are some of the ways that we react in the flesh? The way that Paul here talks about understanding that we're supposed to walk by the Spirit instead of gratifying the desires. Well, I know there's a few ways that I've done it. Maybe some of you have been there too. Just a couple that I thought of. You panic, right? You freak out. Everything is the worst. The sky is falling, right? The world is coming to an end. This person, this president, we're all going to die, right? That person, that law came into, everything's going to go south, right? Everything's going to be bad, right? Everything we think is going to fall apart. It's the best thing, right? We can all sit there with whatever's happening to us and go, that is just the worst. That is just the worst thing is it really the worst thing that could happen? I can think of probably 10 more scenarios that'd be way worse than anything we're dealing with, right? But no, this is where we go. We go exactly to panic mode. We tell ourselves that this is the worst thing that could happen. Maybe you do this. Maybe you pace. Who are my pacers in here? Who just moves back and forth? Y'all ever do this? Here's my favorite one, all right? How many of y'all, when you're on the phone, have to just walk off? Anybody just walk off when you're on the phone? You ever see those people, I find myself, I hate being on the phone, first off. But when I have to be on the phone for a while, because usually if I'm on the phone, it's a really important call. It's a really not a great phone call, right? It's not a phone call I want to be a part of. So usually when I have to be on that phone call, it's a lot of this. Yep, yep. You're doing stretching. You never stretch, but for some reason you're stretching, right? You're climbing the railing of the side of you're just all these random places. You just pace back and forth. We do this in our own lives, right? When things are going bad, you're moving left and right. You're trying to keep yourself busy. You're trying to ignore the fact of what is happening right in front of you. And you pace. You decide, if I just put my head down and keep moving forward, maybe the problem will disappear. So you pace. You go back and forth. I know I've done it. Or maybe you're a pouter. Maybe you pout. Woe is me. Life is over. Nothing's ever going to be good again, right? The things that I once enjoyed, I don't enjoy them anymore. Nothing gives me joy anymore. Nothing makes me feel good anymore. Everything is wrong, right? Because of the bad situation that you find yourself in. Hey, listen, for some reason, you concentrate on the worst parts, right? Like the people that are because it's their birthday, everything has to go right just because it's their birthday. You know what I'm talking about? Something goes wrong and they go, I can't believe this happened today on my birthday of all days. You're like, really? Like, you know how many other people have a birthday today, right? But you're sitting there, oh, it happened because I knew this would happen on my birthday, right? And I think that's just their way of telling you, hey, it's their birthday, right? Oh my goodness, did you see what happened? They bombed on my birthday. They definitely looked up. It was Aaron Fields' birthday, May 22nd. We're going to do it today, right? Like that's how it works, right? But we pout. We're like, man, things are just bad. Things are the worst. Things are never going to go good. You know what? I should just give up. This is where we find ourselves. Every single day, we're making a choice. We're either going to panic, we're going to freak out, we're going to lose it on everybody, and we're going to cause panic among everyone else around us. We're going to find ourselves pacing where we're just like, if we just ignore everything, if we just go back and forth, then we don't have to deal with the problem that's in front of us, or we pout. And we like to sit in our poutiness because misery loves company, right? We want to feel bad, and we want everyone else to feel bad that we feel bad, right? Feel bad for me because I feel bad, right? So this is what we do. These are our fleshly reactions. Why is it the flesh? Because that is our go-to. That's what we go to in the moments when things aren't going great. These are what we believe are our natural reactions, that these are somehow innate and in every single one of us. But what if we actually understood, as Paul understood this long time ago when he wrote to this church in Galatia, that maybe now that we have given our lives to Jesus, maybe we aren't led by our sinful desires. Maybe we aren't led by that flesh anymore, but truly we are led by his Spirit. What if we allowed him to take the wheel? What if we took a moment and let him be the guide for our lives? Maybe we would have some different reactions, right? So here's a couple spiritual reactions. I think that, honestly, for every single one of us, practical, simple, but really can help us every single day as we're saying, I don't want to make that initial flesh reaction, but I truly want to have a spiritual reaction. And some of these may seem a little cookie cutter. They may seem like, hey, I've heard this before. But think about these for a second. The first thing that I see is this. If maybe a spiritual reaction for us would be to pray. Pray. And you say, Aaron, I've heard this rigmarole enough, bro. Are you kidding me right now? Just pray more? Is that literally what you're telling me right now? Pray more? Think about this. In Philippians chapter 4, the writer was talking about what it meant for us to deal with our worry, with our anxiety, with our pain, with our impatience. And what did he have to say about it? He said this in Philippians 4:6. He said, don't worry about anything. Instead, pray about everything. Now, think about this. Do you and I pray about everything? I pray about some things. I pray for a few things. I pray for silly things, right? I'll pray when something's really serious, and sometimes I'll pray for the silliest thing. Lord, give me that front parking spot at Walmart, right? Some of the stupid, and you really think in that moment when you get it, yes, Lord, won't he do it, right? And you're like, that's stupid, bro. No, that's not how that works, right? But somehow we come up with our head, that's how it works, right? But what if we got ourselves in a mindset where we are praying about anything, about everything? And what does that look like for you and I? Here's what's great about God. You and I, in this, what we call Christianity, we have open access to the God who created the universe, who created the sun, the stars, the sea, everything that you see. You and I, he created us, and he tells us on a constant basis, 24/7, he is open for listening to us, hearing from us, and speaking back to us. This is what's wonderful about God. This is what's great. This is what we have access to through Jesus. He says that we actually are able to pray about everything. And here's what he says. Tell God what you need. Thank him for what he's done. Pretty cut and dry, isn't it? Tell him what you need. Thank him for what he's done. I love it. I don't know why. I have read this verse 1,000,000 times. I have. And for some reason, that simple concept blew past me so many times. Tell him what you need. Thank him for what he's done. How many times a day do we actually take the moment to say, God, here's what I need. Thank you for what you've already done. Really? This is what's great about God, is God doesn't look at us and say, I need you to be in this state when you talk to me. I need you to be in this building when you message me. I need you to wear this exact thing when you're talking to me. No, this is what's great about prayer, right? We can do it right here where we're sitting. You can do it when you walk out of this building. You can do it at the restaurant when you go eat. You can do it in your car as you're driving. You can do it in the morning when you wake up. You can do it before you go to bed. Understanding that we have access 24/7, that we can talk to him at any moment. And how does he tell us to do it? When we pray about everything, we tell him what we need, and we thank him for what he's done. This is what's great about our God. Tell him what we need. God, listen, I know this seems silly and stupid, and I'm just sitting in my filth right now because I'm so angry about what's happening. But God, this is messing with me big time. It doesn't say, tell him what you need only if you think he doesn't think it's stupid. Tell him what you need. I need you to help me with this. I need your help. And then thank him for what he's already done. God, I know that you've answered me so many times. I know that you've given me so many blessings that I can't even count right now. Thank you. That's what he asked for. It's simple. We can all do it, right? Tell him what you need. Thank him for what he's done. A spiritual reaction would be to pray. Too often, we take that as the last resort when it actually should be our first choice. Prayer. A famous speaker once said that prayer does not fit us for the greater work, but that prayer is actually the greater work. That's what we're called to do. Next thing is this. If we actually start with that, we actually start with prayer, then we remember something else. Maybe a spiritual reaction for us would be to understand our position with God. We understand where we actually are when it comes to our position. Check this out. James 4:10 says, humble yourselves before the Lord, and he will lift you up in honor. James, this entire chapter is talking about this idea about having humility, a spirit of humility, that those who are humble in the spirit, those who actually are humble will be lifted up and will be given that honor. Why are they given that honor? Because they understand their position. They understand that they were once dead. They understood that they were once without God. They understood that they were once an enemy of God. But because of what Christ has done, he has brought us near. And because he has brought us near, not only has he brought us near, but he's created us and made us one of his children. And not only that, but he has made us an heir to his kingdom. This is the status that we now have in Christ. Every single one of us, when we claim Christ, this is where we find ourselves. This is our position. How often do we act as if that is our position? Let's be honest. Because I think there's two reactions that can happen to this very often. When we do this and we don't recognize our position, we either do one of two things. We either sit there and we go, you know what, forget it. I'm just not even going to be a part of this thing. I don't want to be a part of Christianity anymore. It's dumb, it's stupid. People think that they're better than, and I don't even want to be a part of their rules. I don't want to be a part of anything that they call Christianity, right? And you walk away from it. Or you find yourself reacting another way where you sit there and you're pouting, and you're like, well, I'm just a dirty, rotten old sinner. I'm just the worst. Lord, I know you love me, but I know that I hate myself. I hate everything about me. But Lord, you love me. This is where we find ourselves, and that is an unhealthy state because, yes, I was an enemy of God. Yes, I wasn't in the place where I was supposed to be. But because of what Jesus did, now I have a position that I never had before. What was the king's reaction? Why did he react that way? Because he thought he was in a position to do something, and he wasn't. He was angry. What, does he think I'm God? Does he think I'm God? You know what? Let's just fight. That's what we'll do. We'll just fight. Any of y'all, like at the end of the day when you're confused, I'll just fight him, right? That's what he decides he's going to do, right? Why does he do that? Because he doesn't understand the position that he is in. For you and I, James is talking about understanding that there is a humility in understanding, yes, this is who I once was, but there's status in understanding who you are now when your identity is found in Jesus. So we remember our position. And then the last one is this. Overall, when we understand our position, when we actually take the time to talk to God every single day, when we make it a part of our everyday lives and we're actually asking God for what we need and we're thanking God for what he has done, we actually begin to get something that maybe we never had before. Perspective. We begin to have a perspective on everything that is happening in our lives because there are many times when things happen. Listen, I know we've talked about minimizing those things and saying, well, sometimes we just overreact, right? And it's just silly what we're going through. But listen, sometimes there are things that are real that are occurring in your lives that are earth-shattering. And there are things that you're not sure how to react to because you've never dealt with it in your life. Whether it be a sudden death in your family, whether it be a sickness that you haven't dealt with, whether it be a job, something that you're just, an issue that you can't overcome. All these things can happen and you're not exactly sure how you're supposed to react, and you don't know what God is doing, and you may even be angry with God and confused with God and not knowing what's going to happen. But if we actually took the time and said, God, you know what I need. God, thank you for what you have done. And we remember who He has set us up to be, maybe then we start to gain a little perspective for the moment. One thing I know in my life right now, I have 3 boys. My oldest is just starting high school. So I have high school, middle school, elementary. 3 boys right now. Any of y'all been in that boat? Maybe some of y'all are in that boat right now, right? Okay. Crazy life, right? And of course, my kids want to do everything. So it's like schedule, all that stuff. It's crazy. It really is. It's crazy. We live day to day right now, pretty much. I'm living day to day. And honestly, sometimes it gets a little overwhelming. Sometimes you're just like, I got to get through the day. I just want to get through the day. Let me finish the day. Let me get back to my bed. And then guess what? You just do it all again the next day, right? But you know what? I remember thinking, this was just a couple weeks ago, and I was sitting at the end of the day, and I thought about how stressed out we were with all the stuff that was happening and all the stuff that was going on, and all the things that were happening were good and great and wonderful. Yet I could not enjoy it because I was so worked up with all the busyness and all the things that were happening in this moment. And I thought to myself, have I taken any time today to appreciate the life that I am living right now? To the things that I have? Have I made any perspective about this? Because I know there are things that have already happened in my past. I'm 40 years old now. There are things that have happened in my past that I look back at now, and I think to myself, I wish I would have appreciated those moments a little more. I wish I would have lived in that a little bit longer. I wish I would have had a little bit more perspective of how important that was. And it's not always the good stuff. Sometimes it's the hard stuff. Sometimes it's the tough conversations or the busyness of things that have to get done that you're like, man, that really shaped me into who I am today. And you may not always enjoy the experiences, but you appreciate what it meant for you. Maybe you're in a world right now where you're just waiting on that season to be over. I want you to know that there is just a chance that maybe if we were in this moment just to gain a little perspective, maybe you could just hang on a little bit longer. Maybe you could hold on just a little tighter, because if you can get through this season, you'll be able to look back at it and go, God was using that moment. God was shaping me into something that I did not see at the time, but I trusted in Him. I decided that I was not going to live in fear of the unknown, but I was actually going to live in the freedom that God gives me. What would we do if we actually gain perspective? Proverbs 16:9 says, we can make our plans, but the Lord determines our steps. You can make all the plans you want for your children, all the ideas of all the things you're going to do with your house, all the ways you are going to live your life over the next 20, 30 years. But what's going to be our reaction when it doesn't go to plan? When it doesn't go the way that you thought? Maybe if we gained a little perspective, we could see God's doing something in that. The great, wonderful poet, Dr. Seuss, said this: sometimes you'll never know the value of a moment until it becomes a memory. Maybe for you and I, the moment that we're in, where we don't understand everything that's happening, maybe it'll be a memory of how good and faithful God was to you. I want you to understand this. We live in this life where it's flesh and spirit. It's doing what I want. It's doing what God gives me, the freedom that God gives me in that. It's understanding that we want to live in the fear of the unknown, or do we want to live in the freedom that Christ gives every single one of us? Because fear magnifies what we don't know, and it minimizes what we actually do know about God. But freedom, when we live in freedom, freedom actually gives us and reminds us what we already know and what we already love about a God who cares for you. And God cared about you so much that he decided that he wanted to be with you, and he did that through his son, Jesus Christ. He gave his one and only son so that you and I could have access to him 24/7, and you can pray to him, and you can talk to him about anything in your life, because that's the God that we serve. Would you guys bow your heads with me this morning? And we're going to close. Two things I ask this morning. I want to pray and ask God for every single one of us that we remember what it means to not live this life by the flesh, but truly living by his Spirit and his love and his freedom that he's given to every single one of us. The next prayer I have is maybe someone in here who's never experienced that freedom before. Maybe you've never experienced that love that God has for you. Maybe in this moment you realize that you want that, you need that. The wonderful thing about our God is he has open access to you right now, and all you have to do is call out to him. The Bible says those who call upon the name of the Lord will be saved. Saved from what? Saved from their sins, saved from an old lifestyle, saved from things that you have no control over. He has that for you. If you want that this morning, if you want to give your life to Jesus, if that's something you've been waiting on, this is your moment. Whether you're watching online or maybe you're sitting here in this building right now, you can take this moment and talk to him. Maybe you don't know the words. I'll give you something to say, but you don't have to say it exactly like this. But I will say you have to mean what you say. It's not some special words that is going to change you. It's not some special prayer. It's your relationship with God. It's you having a truthful conversation with the creator of the universe that will change everything. You can pray something like this: God, I know that I'm not perfect. I know that I'm a sinner. But I know that you sent your son Jesus to die for my sin. God, I ask right now that you change me, you save me, forgive me for where I've done wrong. I don't want to live that life anymore. I want to live life led by your Spirit. Thank you for dying on the cross for me. I want to live my life for you. If that's you this morning, you said that prayer and you believed it, you've just given your life to God. And you belong to him now. And nothing can pluck you out of his hand. And if you ever want to know what the next steps are, because here's the thing, you just started this. This is the beginning of the beautiful relationship. This is step one. If you want to know what the next steps are, you can always reach out to us. Find me after the service is over. You can reach out to us on the hub. You can reach out to us on Facebook. Let us know what God has done in your life, because that's reason to celebrate and a reason to understand what the next steps are, because it has just begun. Father, we do thank you for this day. We thank you for those who have possibly called out your name, those who are still working through what it means to give their lives to you. God, help us all as we're trying to figure out what it means to live this life, not led by the flesh, not led by fear, but truly led by your Spirit that gives us power over fear and the ultimate freedom that we have in your Son, Jesus. We love you. We're thankful for that freedom today. We ask all these things in Jesus' name. And amen. Guys, thank you so much. Tomorrow night, backpack giveaway. We hope you guys have a great rest of your week. God bless.